Hi guys, I hope you are well. Let's quickly talk about the sampling. I said we needed to. I think this aircon is making noise. I'm also boiling water to make some tea, so excuse me for the noise. I hope there's good lighting. I'm trying to sit at a corner so I can see you properly and allow you guys to see me. And put you here. So I wanted us to talk about sampling. Research students come here, and researchers, early career scientists, researchers. As long as you're a human science researcher in human science, you need to come here. I'm gonna go out now. Never mind me. But let's quickly talk about sampling. Sampling is when we decide who to study, because in our studies, when conducting a research, it's not possible for you to conduct a research among each and every study unit that you want to study. If you want to know how many people have HIV in South Africa, we cannot study each and every single one of South Africans. It's 60 million young. We cannot go to each and every single one of us to study. Rather, we're gonna take a representative proportion of the people that are a true representation of the entire population, right? So when a studying frame or my studying population, it's everyone that we aim to study. So among a study sample set, study population set, everyone that we are aiming to study, we need to choose a group yabantu that will represent the entire population that we want to study. So that group of people that we are going to take and study on behalf of the entire population is called sample. So sampling, again, it is when we are literally taking a subset of the entire population to study them on behalf of that very same entire population we extracted this sample from. So that's basically sampling. So sampling there's many types of sampling that you need to know as a researcher, and you need to be confident, because your sampling approach tells experts, right, on how much they should trust your results and your interpretation and your recommendation. Before you go to your results, interpretation, discussion, conclusion, we start with your sampling first. We're going to scrutinize how good did you sample whatever that you sampled. And if your sample is not aligned, you may not we may not trust your results. You're conducting that research at a loss, or it's not really a good enough research that can be trusted. Your results are not good enough to make conclusions about the entire population. That's why then interpretation of your results is key. When I conducted research here, my research is mainly, I'm with my clinical background, they are mainly from hospitals. I collected data from the hospital surveillance or hospital patients. So I'm not able to say in the whole of South Africa. That's why in my studies, in my conclusions and in my interpretation and discussion, I would always say in South African hospitals, because that's where I studied, right? So in population, I'm hospitalized people. So I can only make my conclusions based on who I studied, where I drew those people from. So that's the importance of sampling. So we have mainly two categories of samples, which is probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling. So we did explain what sampling is. I believe everyone knows at this point what sampling is. For us to generalize our findings, to be confident to say in South Africa there's 8.4 million people, we need to make sure we collect a subset of the entire population, being the 6 million, that are a true representation of the entire population. When we study this subset, isosipama conclusions that we're able to conclude with the entire population. So the key thing about sampling is that if it's done correctly, we're able to make conclusions on behalf of the entire population. So it's important, before we go to sampling, to define who is your target population, the overall people that you want to study, and what is your sampling frame, where you're going to select now the sample. A sample is who you're going to pick to be studied, right? Because we cannot study each and every single person. We conduct sampling because we don't have money or the time to study each and every single person when we conduct studies. And since we have a sampling, we know if you conduct a sampling properly and sample size, we are able to make our conclusions or study as a represent every single person. So we don't really have to study each and every single person because of sampling. So we need to be thorough in our sampling technique, sampling approach, as well as sample size calculation. But today we're only talking about sampling itself. So we have a probabilistic sampling and the non-probabilistic sampling. So probabilistic sampling. Probabilistic sampling, as in I stumble, man. A probabilistic sample, it's basically when each and every one of the study units, they have a fair chance of being collected or of being included into the sample. So remember, still defining your target population or the study population. From the study population, you're going to select now a sample. So the way of you selecting a sample, if it gives the target population, each and every one of them having a fair chance of being included or not included. We call that random sampling. So under your random sampling, now randomly, basically. You don't pick according to XYZ, you just like randomize into that particular sample oifunayo, right? So under random sampling, we have a simple random sampling, we have a systematic random sampling, stratified random sampling, as well as a cluster sampling. So with simple random sampling, I'm not going to go in depth with these concepts because I'm just highlighting them for you to go and read on them, because you need to know them by heart. You need to have them on your fingertips as a researcher, especially as a research student. So go simple random sampling, you obviously need a sampling frame here. Sampling frame here is the total number of those people that you want to study, right? So we have a way of generating your convenience, and like Excel, there's statistical softwares as well where we are able to generate a random sample. Let's say you have 100 people and you need a sample of 40 participants or 50. So we are we sample randomizele. I need about a subset here 50. Basically randomizele ukuthi you pick ubani nobani benze layo 50, like it's just plain random. So that's an example of how you could conduct random sampling. Then it's systematic random sampling. It's still a random sample, but it's systematic. So I could say, Masia Espegela, let's say I want to study ama accident, a car crash accidents, and then maybe I want to study how was the effect of a safety belt that applied a safety belt, how much they got injured, right? If I want to study that, then I could go to a hospital emergency unit, a casualty. I'm taking every third case of figure. So it's still a random sample, but I have a sequence or an interval of how am I selecting these people. I want every third case. In total, I need them to be 10 that I'm going to study. It's an example. So it's a way of enrolling the people into your study, right? So it's just a random in this case, but there's now that kind of like interval that it gives me an opportunity to enroll them systematically, right? So that is your systemic random sampling. Excuse me. Then we're going to stratify random sampling. Remember, it's strata in epidemiology is a group. So if we are let's try to study a vaccine uptake among men and women. Example, flu vaccine uptake among men and women in a certain institution, maybe in a certain school, tertiary institution, or even at a workplace. We want to study the uptake of the vaccine. And they always give us some vaccine, and it's up to you to take it or not. If we want to study that, we stratify random sampling. Is strata go by gender. So one stratum is going to be male, another stratum go by female. So those are stratum. Then so you tata random sampling within the stratum. So you can see that we first identify two groups. We first grouped people into two groups. Those are stratum. And then we conducted random sampling within the stratum. So this is stratified random sampling. It's a random sampling within the stratum. Is systematic random sampling is still a random sampling in an interval and systematic way of randomly selecting these people, right? And then now there's also a cluster sampling. Cluster sampling now you so identify our it's okay. I need part 2. I'm coming with part 2 now.